we were cutting timber on Bull Flat Canyon for Porter's sawmill down on the Apache Indian Reservation. And did you witness that time, wasn't you?
Yes, I was there.
We had, your dad was with me, and Ray had just got back off of a mission, and he'd really filled a good mission. He was back somewhere where Leon is now, wasn't he?
He was in Virginia and South Carolina.
Yeah, he was in Virginia and South Carolina, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, he'd really done a lot of baptizing. He was a #1 missionary. And the Lord really blessed him with a lot of success on his mission. Of course, even if you just find one, a lot of times you plant the seed and somebody else does the harvest. The main thing is get the seed planted. But anyway, we was hauling off into that canyon, and all the trees had to go into the bottom. And was it you that come out on the other side of the canyon one day and said, "I'm over here on the other side of the canyon"? Or who was that on the other side of the canyon?
When you fell the tree that made the somersault?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one who was out on the other side.
Anyway, you had to fall them trees so that they'd go straight off in the canyon. If you didn't, they'd hang up on the side of the canyon, wouldn't go on down into the bottom, and the skidders couldn't get out, with the cats couldn't get up there and pull them down, so they had to go clear into the bottom. A lot of them would turn over 2.5 times before they'd get the bottom, and then they'd stick up in the bottom and have to go saw them off again with the top stuck in the ground.
A few of them we had to do that, yeah.
So we called it 100-mile-an-hour skidding. None of the trees that was hung up on the wall ever got skidding. There wasn't very many of them. Wasn't over half a dozen, I don't think, altogether, that we didn't get into the bottom of the canyon. But the skidders would skid in one place one day while we fell in the other place, and then while we was falling where they skidded the day before, why, they'd go. We'd shake turns, falling into canyon in a place where the skidders wasn't working. And your dad come over to come out to start sawing. He was on the other side of the canyon. I was up on top up there, about over a quarter of a mile up on top of the rim. And your dad hollered up and said, "Here I am." And I said, "Well, get out of the road." I said, "I'm going to fall this tree." Your dad says, "Well, I'm on the other side of the canyon. I'm up here on this bench up here." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's right where this tree's going to land." So he moved up the hill. He was on the other side of the canyon, and I fell the tree, turned over, and it hit a bluff, jumped into the air, jumped across the canyon, landed right where he'd moved from, on the other side of the canyon.
Vaulted over, hit right on its top, broke the top, and then butt in, flipped right on across.
Just like it was a deer jumping off in the air. It just went right on across the canyon, landed on the other side of the canyon.
And then fell back in.
So you had to make sure that the trees were all that was going where you wanted them to go, or else you didn't get them. So we'd started out this morning to cut trees, and Lavar, he was packing the gas can. He wasn't big enough to saw yet, and
he was only 5.
So we sawed a few trees and had a big tree all ready to go up the canyon, and I got it notched and started to saw it, and then I heard a cat going up the bottom of the draw.
You heard me sawing.
Huh?
You heard me a lemon. I was down in below you lemon, and you came to see where I was.
And so there was a skidder in the bottom there too.
Could have been.
And so I stopped sawing and had to go through a bunch of little pine trees to get over to where the bluff went off, and run over to the bluff to see for sure that everybody was out of the road. And the cat went on up the skidder went on up the draw, and I thought, well, if I saw it while he's up there, why it'll be all right, because if it went right through a cat if it was in the bottom. And so as soon as I saw he got out of the road, he wasn't supposed to be there at all. He was supposed to be on down the canyon where we fell the day before skidding. He wasn't supposed to be up there. There in the canyon. Anyway, I figured, well, if I fell the tree while he's gone, why, it wouldn't hurt anything. So I rushed back to the tree and started sawing again, and the tree started lifting up, and then I thought of Lavar, and I looked around for Lavar, and I couldn't see him anywhere. So I stopped sawing and hollered for Lavar 3 or 4 times, and he'd followed me down to the bluff through them little thick trees, and I couldn't see him in those little pines there. And so I hollered a few more times, and about that time a gust of wind come along, and the tree started raising up, and it didn't turn it off in the bluff because I hadn't finished cutting where it'd go. And the boy ran out in front of him and said, "Here I am, Daddy." The tree was already gone. All I could do is holler, run, get out of the way. So he broke and run, tried to get out of the way, but he had to go over a dry snag that was there, and he fell down, and that tree come right down on top of him. And so I rushed down there and dug him out from under that tree. It took me a while to get him dug out from under there, and when I got him dug out from under the tree, he had one leg bone sticking out through his pants, and his pelvis bone all mashed, chest all caved in. And so I just held him up in my arms and held him out there in front of me, and I asked the Lord to send him back to me because I needed him, and I'd take real good care of him. And I held him there a little while, and pretty soon Lavar opened his eyes and said, "I'm back, Daddy. Here I am." And so by that time, Ray and your dad hadn't heard my saw running, so they come down to see what the problem was. So we just laid Lavar out there on the grass, and we laid our hands on his head, and Ray gave him a blessing. He blessed him that he wouldn't have any pain, that he wouldn't have any ill effects, and he'd be all right. So we hauled him, we packed him over to the pickup. Put him on a blanket, or how did he?
We put him on a board. Put a blanket on a board and tied him on a board and put him in the back of the pickup.
There we packed him up to the pickup and laid him in the back of the pickup, and we took him to McNary or Sholo.
Sholo.
Took him to Sholo, and he was broke up so bad they couldn't do anything with him, so they told us we'd have to take him to Phoenix. So he was still on the blanket in the back of the car.
Tied on a board.
On a board, yeah.
We sort of used a board as a stretcher.
And so we had a blanket over him, so we hauled him to Phoenix. That happened about 9 o'clock in the morning. We got to Phoenix about 9 o'clock at night. And Lavar had never been in any pain. He'd get better talking with us. And the only time when they started stretching his bones out and putting him in trucks and this and that, he said, "Ouch." And other than that, why,
He was in pain.
he didn't seem to have any pain at all. And today, he's just as active a man as you could just
They told him he would never walk.
gets around like he's never had an accident. So it pays to kind of live in tune so you can get the message when it comes to you, and it's good to have your prayers answered. I think that's probably enough.